God Morgan, and happy Money's Day to you today. And all of this week, we raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women around the world. We definitely want to draw attention to returning them home to their loved ones and keeping safe those that's still at home. We want to make sure that we're embracing and caring and loving these divine feminine amongst us. So this week, all of this week, we'll be wearing red to make sure that we're supporting the missing and murdered indigenous women around the world, because it is a very interesting point when we talk about Mani, of course, representing the Norse god Mani, of control, mental control, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. As always, I want to say good morning and thank you for joining me here. Whether you are joining on all of the video platforms here, please take a moment, like, follow, subscribe, help us to build into the algorithm and get our messages out there further, that those who need to hear this can hear it, right? Because we're really wanting to help you obtain or maintain your mental health. We also want to give a shout out to newrealitytv.com. Newrealitytv.com offers a plethora of spiritual perspectives to help you find a way, something that resonates with you, that can help you, again, obtain or maintain that mental space. As always, this show and all of our morning shows are available on audio podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, like, follow, subscribe us on our one of our channels, whether that be YouTube, Facebook, or TikTok. For those of you who do have a question, want to pose it to us while we're online, Facebook Live, we are there and providing you with this live chat that you can now ask questions. Finally, before I get into today's message, I want to, for those of you who do have a few coins, wish to drop them in the tip jar, please feel free to do so. We're always looking for more help to support us and the mission of getting this word out about our mental health. And finally, as I get ready, for those of you who do have a question, Sporks Mall will be available Wednesday night. As you may or may not know, Sporks Mall is where we answer questions that you have asked us and hopefully help you along your journey, along your spiritual path. So feel free to take a look at NorseWhispers.com. There you can also find my coaching. You're welcome to reach out to me and let's start a conversation. Let's have that dialogue that hopefully can help kind of reobtain your mental space. Today we're talking about the Norse god Mani, and I think it's really appropriate that today we're also celebrating the awareness, bringing the awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women all around the world. Control that Mani brought, as you recall, Mani represents the balance. He represents the balance between his sister soul and himself. So the heat of the day, the cool of the evening, intellect of the illumination during the day, the questions that would drive our future education as we went into the darkness, into the evening. Remember, dark energy is not, it's not bad in of itself. It's simply unilluminated. So we have a responsibility, if you will, to illuminate it in a lighting, positive way. So that's on us. Now, this brings up a perfect segue into understanding energies. Now, we talk a lot about things floating around in our mind, and we're constantly thinking of these different things, different scenarios, different reasons for being, or so we think. And these energies come in a couple of different flavors. They're either positive, obviously, or negative. Now, notice in this case, I don't say neutral, right? Because once energy enters into the mind, enters into the processing of this, of us, the humans, it then changes its polarity based on what's going on in the mind, emotionally in the mind. Now, we talk about moods, and what do moods do, right? Well, that's really what is setting our emissions of energies around us. So if we are surrounded by people who are very negative in their approach of life, we are going to struggle to remain positive. Now, that's not to say that we can't influence them with our positivity. It's a two-way street. So when people say, "Oh, well, I don't like that person because of X, whatever," right? And we say, that's not really such a big deal. It's not really an important metric at which to judge this individual. We start churning that energy. Now, again, our energy is in a constant state of flux. Every present, and we talk about the present being that micro sliver of time that exists between experiences we have had and the ones we haven't. Right? It's that micro sliver of time where our whole consciousness exists. Everything about us fits in that micro sliver of time. Then we refer to the experiences that we have had to now move forward into the experiences that we haven't. This is kind of the process at which we essentially go about our everyday. Energy is what drives emotion. Emotion, of course, is what drives our interpretation of reality. So, think about it this way. If, as an example, we were to, and I say this quite frequently, we were to wake up grumpy. We're just not in a good mood. Nothing can make us happy today. And as we begin our day, we get into our morning commute to work, our morning work routine where customers or colleagues may be testing us, right? We get into these scenarios. Because we set the mode, we set our mood as being grumpy, getting out of bed, everything that happens now on the timeline, on this event timeline that we have, is going to support that mentality. It's going to everything is going to be interpreted to support that mindset. Now, we have a choice. Now, remember, we can wake up in the morning and, it's just grumpy. We just don't feel right. It just, ugh, right? And we say to ourselves, you know what, though? This is going to be a great day. Put it in our mind. This is the morning affirmations that many of us use, is that we're going to take a moment, we're going to clear out that negative energy, we're going to focus on the positive, and we're going to change our mindset. Now, the same event timeline that we went through that supported the grumpiness now supports our new mindset. Think of it this way. If you, I'm not familiar if everyone in the world plays this game, but when I was a boy and my mother and father would take us on road trips, one of the things that they would do to preoccupy my brother and I would be to play a game, and the game was called Slug Bug. Have you guys ever played that? It's a wonderful little game. I don't recommend it to the extreme, mind you, but nonetheless, Slug Bug, you simply see a Volkswagen Beetle on the road, and you would tap your whoever you're playing with, and you would say Slug Bug, whatever color it was. Now, what my mother and father didn't realize, or maybe they did, was that I don't see color. I am dog colorblind, so all I see is shades of gray. And so this game was increasingly challenging to me because I had to judge a shade of a vehicle I had never seen before. So no one had ever told me that, hey, that's a green slug bug or that's a red slug bug. Nobody had told me. So many times I would spend this game more or less kind of frustrated that I I couldn't call a slug bug to save my life, really, because I couldn't see the color. And that's part of the game, is that you would say, slug bug the blue one, slug bug the red one. Now, I could have taken this as a challenge and really learned how to identify the shade of gray. And this is what I did. I took this as kind of a challenge, not only to be the first to spot a Volkswagen Beetle, but to learn the colors. So I kind of challenged myself in how to identify this. Now, what happened was my brother and I, actually my father and my mother, we'd all play this game. We were setting or training our brain to look for Volkswagen Beetles. So in the traffic of every day, hundreds of different cars, thousands of different cars, our brain would filter out the Volkswagen Beetle. This is the same thing we can do with our mindset in the morning when we train our brain. We're training it to find good things, happy things, loving things, blessed things. So we're setting our mindset to kind of clear away all of this other stuff and find love, to find joy, to find those things that are just really support a harmonious life here on Midgard. Now, conversely, if we just kind of surrender and we allow the fates to drive this, the fates will kind of point to the negatives. It's not intentional, so to speak. It's simply a way that the fates say, avoid this, right? So we're trying to avoid that, but we're calling it out, right? We're focused on it to be able to avoid it, right? Whereas, conversely, if we change our mindset, and now we're actively seeking those positive things, those enlightening things, those loving things, those kind things, we're now training our brain to look for those things. Many times, particularly in domestic violence cases, what we see is a mindset. It's either one of a couple of different mindsets, but the two that I'm most familiar with, the first is the superiority complex. And this is where one person seems to have an overinflated ego, and they're not really interested, per se, in harmonious living. They don't really, that's not their thing, okay? So they are domineering. They're very overwhelming. They know how to play the emotional cards. They can undermine our belief in ourselves and our self-confidence. And this then kind of opens us up to, unfortunately, getting into a situation that may or may not be beneficial for us, right? The other group of individuals that are fairly popular, not popular, generous, or have a larger contingent, are people who have very zero self-worth. They haven't looked into their well of their self. They haven't taken some time to clear away the water and see the beautiful rocks of the beautiful person they really are. They're too interested in making changes, trying to fit into some imaginary perceived role or a perceived position, And so they're kind of changing out rocks faster than most people change clothing, right? So that type of individual is struggling with understanding who they are. Now, for those of you who may be struggling with who you are, let me tell you momentarily, if I may, who you are. You are a gift. You have within you two major parts that make you the absolute most wonderful gift to mankind there is. One, you have a big old heart. That's right. You have a heart that's capable of creating a wonderful kaleidoscope of a loving emotion. It's a beautiful thing. And you can do this. There's no cost. There's no bad ramifications to this. You can do it anytime you want. You can be loving and supportive and harmonious and peaceful. All of these things. Many times, men come to me and they have this male stereotype in their heads, and they're saying, "Well, we don't show emotion, and we're all of this." Well, you're not. All right, you're no different than anyone else. You have emotion and you have thought. One drives the other, and when you put these two things into balance, we find that we have a harmonious, peaceful life. I also, I'm very often entertained by people whom I meet, and these men and women in a gym setting, and they're quiet, and they're doing their thing. They're reserved. They're not blah blah blah, right? Those are the ones with power, true power. But they have something even better. Power up here. Oftentimes on every Thursday, of course, we speak about the Norse god Thor. Thor was infamous for his strength. He was a very powerful, physically powerful being. But he was also a very mentally powerful being. He was able to see through many of Loki's deceits. You find him in many of the sagas where he's kind of uncovering things and in coming up with solutions and to his investigations. Thor was very mentally powerful. Now, one of the other things is that once he made a decision, that was it. He could change his trajectory and then stick to that change. He wouldn't let it backslide. So for those of us who have struggled with addiction and in the multiple flavors, this addiction is simply that. It's we may make a conscious decision that we want to stop this substance, whatever it is. And in my case, 35 years ago, it was heroin. And we may say to ourselves, "Oh, this stuff is really bad for us. We don't need it." But yet, we make that decision, and we can't support, or mentally, we're not supporting it. We're just simply saying it for almost posterity's sake. It's very almost moot, right? Because we don't have this committed yet, right? We may know that the situation is bad. We may know that, yes, there's nothing good going to come of this, but yet that feeling hasn't made it to the processor yet. So that's what we need to do when we talk about any type of addiction. We need to consider where the control is. Many people have asked me over the years, well, is alcohol the problem? Because I have a real problem with alcohol. Okay. No, alcohol is not the problem. Alcohol is the vehicle. Okay, alcohol is not the problem. The problem is up here. And I know many people may not want to hear that, but that's what it is. All right. We can drink alcohol in small quantities, and and maybe even short bursts in a very controlled environment. We can have fun. There's nothing wrong with the ingestion of alcohol or maybe some marijuana. For those of you who enjoy the smoke, okay. The problem isn't the drug. The problem is here. Now, I will also say, though, we have to remember that our body is a chemical machine, all right? And when those chemicals reach the brain may interpret them as an emotion. Why? Because that's what the brain does. When we see something that upsets us, that makes us sad, that makes us angry, that makes us something, we see something, that visual energy that's being passed through the optic nerve is going to go through an emotional filter. All right, that emotional filter is going to, as we said before, kind of like the mood, if you will, for that day. It's going to process through that, and when it does, that mood ring is going to send a signal down to our heart that's going to release hormones into our bloodstream. Then they're going to propagate everywhere and eventually wind up back in the brain. Now the brain is going to take this new chemical composition. It's going to look at what's involved in this chemical composition. It's going to compare it against its little recipe book and say, okay, here are these chemicals and they're all together, and okay, so this means I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, I am whatever, right? So the brain is going to interpret this chemistry as a feeling. How do we feel? Now, if you have alcohol on board, you've ingested alcohol, the alcohol gets into your system gets into the blood gets into the brain gets into the translation. Now, this is where things get kind of hazy. Why? Because this chemical composition is now convoluted. It's got alcohol in it. It's kind of wonky when it's now being looked at by the brain, and the brain says, well, it's kind of like that, but it also matches this thing down here. Pick one. Okay, this one. And we find almost another personality that can come out during these bouts of chemical alteration of our system. This is very critical to understand our mental state, because now, as this chemistry comes into the brain, it's recognized, cataloged, and we now feel this way. We're going to set our emotional filters. So now the next experience that we have, the next present, remember, micro sliver of time, the next experience we have is now interpreted through that newly changed filter, which can mess things up, right? So something that we see quite often when we are heavily intoxicated, where we see this chemistry coming in, setting the filter, and then the next thing, the next experience we have, which shouldn't have been anything to consider, now becomes so much more. Why? Because it's now being interpreted through a different filter, a filter that we may not want. Now, the good news is there's still one more step beyond this emotional filter before we process the actual signal, right? So there's one more step, and that step is called the me gateway, or that's what I call it, the me gateway. The me gateway says, everything that we've got now, every piece of information in our heart and our visual says that we should be angry. Everything. But I choose no. I choose joy. I choose harmony. I choose peace. That's the me gateway. The me gateway can change everything that we're interpreting. We're bringing in tons of negativity, and the mind says, hey, we got to be negative. Why? Because we're getting inundated with all this stuff. And we simply say no. We have that choice. We alone can create the narrative within our mind. Right? We have that authority. No one else has the authority to change this but you. Right? No one else. I mean, they may produce a lot of influential energies in an attempt to change you, but ultimately, down at the bottom, you and you alone allow the control or manipulation of your thought process through this thing I call the me gateway. All right? And the me gateway is really, really critical because that puts the accountability on us. We are indeed our sister's keeper. We should be able to keep all peoples, all life is precious. It's a gift from the gods. It's a gift. And those individuals are as deserving of their perspectives in life as you are of yours. There's no difference. Your perspective is not better than theirs. It's different. And different is okay. It's what makes this world, it's the beautiful place that it is. Different perspectives, a kaleidoscope of different views that make the world a better place. So, today and this week, as we celebrate the missing and murdered Indigenous women, an awareness. We don't celebrate them, of course. We celebrate an awareness, bringing that to the forefront and making sure we all understand that all peoples, all life is precious. And we should do everything in our power, everything in the me gate, to be harmonious, equal, safe. All of these things every life form deserves. Okay? And so today I call out to all my sisters, mothers, nieces, grandmothers, aunties, you name it. I call out to you. I pray that for your safety. I pray for your continued growth, and I pray for your loving heart to be a part of this world and all of the realms at which I travel and I am. I pray that you will find your peace. I pray for all of those whose loved ones are still missing. I pray that you will find that peace that you need, and that they will find your loved one, and know, I guess, in your heart that these loved ones, they call to us, and they tell us that peace can be found in our hearts, and we must find that peace. So I pray for all of you. My friends, I wish you the very best Money's Day. We look forward to seeing you again for tomorrow, Tuesday. For those of you who are not signed up, by all means, go check out MMIW, particularly those here in Alaska. I have put a hashtag on here somewhere, but this is the week of awareness for those of you out there. Please wear red today. Let's show our support for all the women who are missing and all the ones whose loved ones wait for them to return home. I pray for all of you. I wish you all the best of Money's Day, and we will see you again tomorrow for Tears Day. Love and light, my friends. Most importantly, love.